And I'm a journalist at WAN-IFRA. This session on diversity and inclusion is being presented by Akanksha Saxena. Akanksha is an award-winning international journalist working as the editor of the German public state-owned international broadcaster Deutsche Welle. Akanksha has more than 10 years of experience as a journalist with major broadcasting networks such as BBC and TRT World. In her new assignment with DW, which started in 2021, Akanksha is a presenter and producer of an interview series about female trailblazers from India for DW Hindi. She covers politics, diplomacy, culture, and society for DW Asia, as well as breaking news in West Europe. She directed an episode in the DW series called Choices, Dare to Dream that won a gold at the New York Festival's 2022. Before DW, she worked as a broadcast journalist for the global 24-hour news channel TRT World, headquartered in Istanbul, Turkey. There, as part of the editorial team, she oversaw production, commissioned stories, and planned long-term and breaking news coverage. She won a UN Ladley PF Award for gender-sensitive reporting in 2021. She has been deployed for the Catalonian referendum, G7 summit, and refugee crisis in Europe. Before I request Akanksha to take the stage, I want to remind the audience to post their questions for her in the Q&A box, which we will take up at the end of the session. Over to you, Akanksha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neha, and thank you so much for having me on this topic about diversity and inclusion. This is something which is very, very close to my heart. I have worked for 10 years in the international newsrooms, largely as someone who's actually a minority brown person of color. And, you know, I can tell you about so many examples that I've faced where I've had challenges while working in newsrooms, which were largely white male dominated newsrooms, and I have tried make my way through that, and it's been an interesting journey. There have been a lot of learnings along the way. I started my career as a researcher with BBC, and there this was basically at that time the idea and the discussion on diversity had already started, and increasingly there were reports that people want to see and identify the people on air as to be coming from their own communities. Like, for instance, Indian audiences would be interested in seeing an Indian news reader or a presenter or a correspondent on air, because they relate to them better. And this was in 2011, and there were policy changes in the organizations. And I'm very glad to say that, for instance, again at the BBC, there were correspondents who are now from India, and they work on global events and affairs. Same situation at TRT World, where I worked and moved. I had moved to Turkey back in 2015, and there were similar. It was a more diverse newsroom in terms of different nationalities, but it still had issues of whether it was, how much of gender representation takes place there or not. And finally, now I'm at Deutsche Welle, where this is a constant work in progress. So I won't take up a lot of your time and talk about my anecdotes, because this is that could take another session. But I would start with the presentation here, and we'll talk about what is diversity, why is it important, why this is a business case that is important. I'm just going to see if you can all. I just want to double check, Neha, with you if this is visible. Yeah.
Visible,
okay.
Yeah.
So here in the picture, you can see this is an MCR of a newsroom, and I just see mostly male technicians here. But we'll talk about these things in this presentation, and I'll move on. I'll talk about what really is diversity. Diversity to me is, I am a brown person is not diversity. I am a brown person, somebody else is a Caucasian, somebody else come from Latin America, someone else is within Indian context. If you talk about someone has a different religion, comes from a different, is LGBTQI, is from the Dalit community, that's diversity. It's not one person, it's everybody's unique story. my unique story about my work is different from somebody else's unique story about their unique experience. And this really, in plurality makes a unique view of the world. So we have to acknowledge in today's day and age that my view of the world is not perhaps similar to the view of somebody else's worldview. And that worldview, which is different or could be contrarian to mine, also matters. Diversity also means that we have to accept that reality, that any story or any narrative is made up of different realities. We have to acknowledge that without diversity, without different stories, without my experience that I have grown up as a woman in urban India, um, is very different from somebody else's experience who's a Dalit journalist, for example, and has grown up in the in different in a different part of India, and their experience and their realities have been very starkly different from mine, and we have to accept and respect that. And so without diversity, we really paint a distorted picture of reality. It's not the complete picture. So we have to consider diversity amongst ourselves. And now the question that we come to is that what in the specific context of journalism does it mean? I'll start with this picture. And this is a picture of, a news debate where you have to see, and I'm sure like most of you would be able to recognize there's a problem with this picture. There are 12 panelists here, and all of them are men. And I would rather call it a manalist and not a panel. It's a manel where they're only, I mean, the thing is that they're actually talking about Priyanka Gandhi in politics, a woman politician, and everyone's debating now here, and all of them are debating amongst themselves without a perspective from that could come, which could be different from a woman's point of view, which could be different from a minority point of view. So the situation in Indian newsrooms is what we're going to talk about very quickly. Um, we'll start with women in news. Women, there's a UN Women Report of 2021 that specifically gives you numbers and data. They basically are saying that only 1 in 5 panelists, which we're just talking about across primetime debates in English, is a woman. 1 in 5. 1 in 10 panelists across primetime debates in Hindi is a woman. So the situation in Hindi newsrooms, in television newsrooms, is worse. Gender representation on the English primetime TV has actually decreased in the pandemic years in 2019, 2020. There hasn't been change or progress in terms of the same things in the debates in Hindi. While discussing sports, all the panels across English and Hindi are manels. Women are not there. For some reason, women are only dedicated to do human interest stories, culture, entertainment. There are very less women who are doing politics, sports, fields that are not just human interest, which are quote unquote called serious journalism. So where is this coming from? Women's voices again have been missing on COVID-19 discussions. So this is the problem with the television newsrooms mostly. Women experts that were called on Hindi TV debates were on civil society, they were NGO professional backgrounds. So what about the other domains? Why were women not there? The same report basically in print media also doesn't paint a very good picture. It has 3 in every 4 news articles were authored by male journalists, by men. The publication has, again, like the highest share of women authored news stories was on business pages. There were hardly any on sports. There was a meager coverage of gender issues. Gender issues are not really talked about so much. There was a dip in women writing about issues. And again, 18% of all articles analyzed related to COVID-19, in those articles, 18% of those articles, 36% were only authored by women, and the rest were by men. So this is a disproportionate amount of article coverage. So women journalists are not getting enough space in the pages of newspapers as well as in media. as well as in the television news. I'll also come to marginalized group that we're talking about. We're talking about Dalits, Adivasis, OBCs. Where are these people in the newsroom? According to this report by Oxfam and News Laundry Research, it's a 2019 report. It hasn't been done again, but there the situation remains very, very stark. Out of 121 newsrooms that were surveyed, 106 of these newsrooms had leadership positions that were held by upper castes, and this is problematic because none of the people were actually from the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. So it really asks for it's a matter of representation. If we don't have representation of all castes or different regions, it gets very, very difficult for all the stories or all the perspective to come to the fore. 3 out of every 4 anchors again on flagship debate programs are upper caste. Not one is Dalit, Adivasi, or OBC. 70% of flagship debate shows, news channels, they have panelists. We're not only talking about anchors, we're also talking about panelists, and they are derived from upper castes. And now this is again a very, very difficult thing to kind of make sense of. 5% again of all articles in English newspapers that were surveyed were written by Dalits and Adivasis. That's a very small percentage. It's only marginally better in Hindi newspapers. So these are hard facts. These are hard facts of why we don't have diversity in Indian newsrooms. Again, there are more numbers, like 10 of 972 articles featuring on cover pages of 12 magazines, and that the study were related to caste. So we're talking about all the marginalized groups. We have to understand that without proper representation, we cannot actually give a complete picture that we were talking about. My experience is not all the experience experienced by all the people. They have different experiences that need to be talked about. Those experiences really make the crux of news, of storytelling. I'll move on and I'll give examples now of what it would look like. Again, like this is another chart which also says that debates where majority of panelists were upper caste in all the news channels. I mean, it really, really is very high, like 65%, 89%. This is really this is not really okay, because this has to change. So what diversity and inclusion and what it can look like. So we are talking about gender inclusion. We're talking about perspectives that come from when a woman is writing about something, a man is writing about something, or they are bringing. I'll give you an example. I was working at the BBC, and I was working as a producer where we would go and do stories from the hinterland, from the interiors of India, and we would go there, and women would just not talk in front of the camera. It was very, very hard. And at one point I understood that they were not comfortable with the camera person being a man, because they're not able to express themselves freely. They're shy. They don't want to talk in front of a man. So now this is not an example where I'm saying like men or women or somebody is better over the other, because this is not really about supremacy. It's about access as well. So a camera person who's my colleague, her name is Neha Sharma. She is working with the BBC back in India, and suddenly I started seeing that our reports, when we were working together, and women were filmed in a different way. They were more confident on camera. They were talking. They were talking about issues that you seldom hear them talk about. They had forgotten that a camera was placed there, and they were really telling you about the issues that concern them, about kind of discriminations that they are facing on a daily basis, the kind of situation that they want improvement, accountability from the leaders, and things like that, which they seldom would talk if it were so that really is important, because like access of it becomes very different when you have people. Again, same thing, if I would say, would be a caste diversity. If the person who's asking me a question comes from a higher caste, for instance, and I'm a person who's been asked about a question about, and I'm from the lower caste, I might feel intimidated answering that. I might not give you the complete picture or the complete story. Similarly, regional diversity. India is a big country. I like to call it, because I live in Europe, and I think it's similar to how a European Union looks like. We have different states with cultural diversity, linguistic diversity. So we have different regions, we have different and each culture is very unique. So we have to represent that. There are all these, we see now this debate being talked about in the films as well now, where we have people from the northeast of the country, really you really tell you that why they don't feel comfortable sometimes, because they're not accepted enough, perhaps. Again, viewpoint diversity. It's a matter of trust that newsrooms are now being tagged as, oh, this has a right wing ecosystem or it has a left wing ecosystem. And I don't think so. News should be that. It should be about balance. So we need to have different viewpoints in the news channels, in the offices, where I hold a contrarian view, it only adds more value to what I'm writing. If somebody else is cross checking my copy, it only adds value if the viewpoint is, like there are more questions being asked. There is a devil's advocate. Religious diversity, very important. I think we are at the cusp of we've seen these increased instances of communal violence as well. So this is extremely important, that we understand each other, the syncretic culture of India, and we draw people who report from their own communities as well. It's very important. Again, in the Western media, or with the BBC or Deutsche Welle, for instance, migrants and refugees become a question where they're always usually given they're not given their voices. They're usually given tags of, maybe they are criminal, maybe they are they want to settle down in Europe. Similarly, in India, for example, migrants are not really given their due. And there were very few reports in the first wave of the pandemic, where when the migrants are actually walking back, where we heard from them so much in the news mainstream media, where they were telling their own story. Again, disability is a big factor. That we have to have people who we don't feel sorry about, we include them. And that really brings the change in your coverage, where people talk about the issues that are affecting them directly. So those are different things that look, not just things that need to be included in the mainstream. I will talk about multiple perspectives again. We are becoming a more diverse country, the diverse world, and so news outlets have to reflect that. It's their responsibility. If they don't do that, you see that the user generated news platforms or digital influencers, they are now outperforming traditional outlets of news. Actually, they're getting views in millions and even billions, and they're attracting new audiences. So if we don't change ourselves, if we don't bring multiple perspectives, somebody is just going to not watch us and watch something else which they feel that they are being represented there. And news content has to provide this accurate reflection of how diverse the society itself is. So we can't really have a diverse society being told by one set of people. It has to be told by different set of people. I have given example of how a woman's perspective in access looks like. I was talking about Neha Sharma. She's the one who is pictured here in the third picture. She brings such an amazing different composition, eye to the detail, when she's filming, and it really comes across very clearly. that it's a very, very different, it's a woman's perspective of filming, of seeing. It's very different from, say, for example, a male's gaze or male colleague's gaze, for instance. So these are different stories that I've covered. This is long time ago. You can also see the first picture is from Yogita that I was just talking about, back in 2011, when the debate inside BBC was how it has to be more diverse, and we have to bring people who speak in their accents, who make you understand what is their worldview, where they're coming from. I'll give you another example from one of the coverages that we had, and I'll not take a lot of your time because it's really not about anecdotes, it's really about the core issue. I was sent out to do a story with Yogita and Bhaskar, who are in the second photo actually, which is from Nepal earthquake here. But we were sent out to do a story on, there were these sterilization deaths. There was this botched surgeries that happened in Chhattisgarh. And we were, this was a few years ago. And what I heard from, my editor above was like, hey, this was some kind of a factory style sterilization camp gone wrong, so you need to report on that. And both Yogita and I thought that there is more to this than what looks like we are reporting facts, obviously, but we have to understand where this is coming from. And we both went and spoke to various women from the villages surrounding where this has happened. And what we understood was more than what it was being called as factory style sterilization camp. Women really take, they are mostly migrant laborer women who take out a day out to go do these surgeries. The doctors who are working on these sterilization have they have targets to meet, but at the same time, these people are overworked. There are no doctors back in the interiors of Chhattisgarh. So one person is literally has to travel different villages and do these sterilization surgeries. So what we understood was that, calling it a factory style is not justice. It really, the women have to tell, for example, the women don't even sometimes tell their husbands because they do not have autonomy on their bodies on whether or not they should do the sterilization surgery. So most of these women don't tell their husbands, for example, about this. So we wouldn't have known this had we not spoken to the women and if they were not comfortable talking about it. So we changed the idea, the top line of the story. We made it more human. We humanized it. We understood that this is a complex system. This is not black and white. There is a reason why there's only one doctor catering to so many districts. There's a reason why these women are, lining up and getting this done. It's all very well connected. Why there are these issues of public, primary health centers not being there. So it really had too many layers. It had too many perspectives, and it was not just one perspective. So that's an example I thought is important to understand that there are several stories and narratives. I'll move to who are our protagonists. Right now at Deutsche Welle, we are trying to work in our editorial principle and as part of our growth strategy and as part of our work and responsibility to have more and more women in our coverage, and also women who work as journalists, as well as women who are represented in our stories. So, and minorities as well. This is something that we've been doing. This is an example of, there's very few women who are talking about, who talk about technology. So here is my colleague in the first picture, if you can see, her name is Ritika. We're talking, this is for DW Hindi. She's here, talking about technology and how it's changing. And it's not that common to see women to do that, but this is important. She's passionate about it and she wants to talk about it, and she has the platform to do it. It's a responsibility that we share. Isha Bhatia has her own program. She understood where there's a gap of health issue being discussed openly without any taboo. And she understood in specifically in the Hindi journalism ecosystem, there's a gap. So she has started doing these videos that really directly engage with women, talk to them and tell them that this is, these are the myths of your health issues. These are not, this is what you can do. And, you can go to the doctor for more information, but this is what it is. And these are explainers, and these really are important. And as a result, so many women have actually started engaging on our platforms because of this. We have other series, like we have Her, which is Women in Asia, which is on OTT platforms. We have Breaking Barriers in Deutsche Welle. So these are something which is part of our corporate policy. Last year when I joined, I started doing this trailblazers interview, women trailblazers who are doing amazingly well in their careers, and people don't know about them so much, and especially Hindi audiences don't know so much about them. So I started interviewing them directly, and you can also see pictures of some of these women here who are really, really the rock stars, and their story need to be told in their own voice. So this was an interview series that I did. So these are the protagonists. We have to do this thing, and I will come to why this is, why this is a business case. Where is the money in it? Where is the intention in it? I'll come to that very quickly. The main and the thing that I want to underline in our business of news is trust. Really, why do people not take news from social media influencers and still go to traditional websites to confirm something? Because of trust. But this trust is really, really depleting. So there was an Ipsos study that was done, and in 27 countries, and they found from 2014 to 2019, the trust in newspaper and magazines has dropped, and the average was 16%. And you can see, like, it happened especially in United States and in Britain, where these are the traditional home to independent media systems, as we call them, and the public trust in this print media dropped 26 and 27% in these countries. Same is happening in radio, television, online. I mean, we don't have a number in India yet, but we always, I have heard so many of my relatives and friends say, we don't trust the news anymore, we don't trust the people anymore. And this is increasing. This is a problem, that if the trust won't exist, we won't exist. And I think building a diverse newsroom is important in this context, because trusting that my story is being told, trusting that an underrepresented group is, like, we don't see one set of people, we see all set of people here. We see a diverse world, we see different viewpoints of something. That really is what needs to be done to build this trust. So for example, again, like, I'll come back to the examples of how many Dalit people are there in the newsrooms, and the number is appalling, right? So the challenge is now is not about rebuilding. For the first thing is actually building a relationship from scratch with examples like that. So we have to have diverse newsroom. That's one big reason, because the trust from audiences, trust from our readers, this trust in expansion of our readership, in expansion of our viewership, is very, very important. Again, business, a lot of people will talk about, where's the money, why should we do it, why can't the system just go on like how it is? And I will say that there are hard numbers there also. So now, if there are more diverse companies, let's just talk about this as a company and not really as news, as something that informs and educates and entertains and tells you the story, but also as a company. So if there's a company, it's more likely to perform non-diverse companies. And there are hard facts here, because there are studies that are done. There's a study that was done by McKinsey Group in 2019 that show companies in top quarter which they have gender diversity in executive teams, in the teams of leadership. They were 25% more likely to experience above average profitability than peer companies. There must be a reason behind it. They are diverse. There is a reason. There are people bringing different diverse perspectives. Risk taking is different. All of these things really, really do matter, right? So if you just see it is as a business case, there are hard facts why it is needed. So the degree that I was talking about, how trust is one of the more important things, and our value as journalists is really into getting our sources, isn't it? It's really getting to the core of the issue in a very, very easy, straight way, where we understand this is the story and we impart that information, we tell that information. So really, if we rely on the ability of the staffers to effectively connect with their sources, audiences, and each other, that there has to be a more diverse newsroom, because maybe my source will not open up to me if I don't identify with me. If they identify with someone who's coming from an LGBTQ group, they will perhaps not tell me things, uh, and experiences, and they may not be comfortable opening up about that. So it is important that this is more productive way, and it's also profitable. So that really shows you that. Now, I also want to talk about how this can be done. What are the best practices that newsrooms are already doing, or they can also do, and how can they improve their diversity, equity, issues of equity and inclusion. So first of all, I think they need to have recognition of the problem, that there is a problem of representation. Like, they have to see and understand that there are not enough panelists who are diverse enough. There are not enough news readers who are diverse enough. Have these organizations, I'm talking about the mainstream news media outlets, have they even done a demographic survey of their news organization? Do they know how many women, men, people from different, and this need not be, this could be done internally with privacy, where these results are there with the HR, and they understand what are the corporate goals of, and where we need to do better and what we need to do better. Unless this demographic survey, and most of the newsrooms, I'm sorry to say, do not do this. They don't have the surveys that I just showed, that are done independently by other companies, across to understand the media landscape. Why is a demographic survey not done within your own news organization, to understand the issues of caste, the issues of gender, the issues of underrepresentation of other different communities? So I think the first thing is that we recognize that there is a gap, and there has to be a demographic survey. And then it has to become a corporate goal. Deutsche Welle, where I work, it is a corporate goal that we have to have more and more engagement. We are not interested anymore with we are interested in what we have as existing viewers and people who we watch our content, but we really want to expand. We really want to expand to, like, this women, to people who are from other backgrounds, and bring them to the to this, which is mainstream, and increase that kind of so this is part of our corporate goal, that more and more women on air or as panelists are important. I'll give you an example. I work with Asia Desk. I commission a lot of stories. I have commissioned a few stories from Kashmir as well. And there were these journalists that were giving me stories, some very brilliant people, extremely sharp, extremely know what they want to, balance stories where they're meeting the government, they're telling me the stories, amazingly well shot and all of that. But I had to send a few pieces back, and I asked them why there are no women in these stories, and it's not okay anymore, because women are more than 50% actually of the world population. Why are they not represented? And there has been answers given to me that, oh, they don't talk because it's a conservative society. I'm sorry, that's not really that's not really true, because when I see women protesting in Kashmir, they are women protesting and they have a voice. They do have a voice. It's just that we don't ask them or nudge them enough to talk, and they do talk once they open up. So, when I ask them to redo these stories and bring me panelists and bring me experts and bring me case studies where there's a woman talking, they went back, they did it, and it really, really changed the impact that that story had. So this is important, and this has to be part of the corporate goal. Again, we have to create a culture that recognizes and supports and advances diversity. We have to be, this is a matter of boldness. I'll give you an example. I live in Bonn in West Germany. I work for a newsroom, which is, again, like, it is diverse, but it is largely a German news organization. And I have been asked to be on call for any breaking news stories. And whenever I was on call for any breaking news stories from West Europe, I have gone to cover these breaking news stories of protests happening because of the Russian Ukraine war. So I have covered. So you see, there is an impact when a person of color on air is telling you about something that's happening in what is largely a Caucasian European context. And it is important, but it would not have happened had it not been the boldness of my editors to send me to do this story and have that trust over me. This is a culture that's needed. It needs to be supported. It needs to happen by, these demographic surveys, these goals have to be set by the media leaders. Because we are in this leadership summit, I think it is important and imperative. It's really on the editors to bring these changes. I will quickly move to diversity within the newsroom at all levels. Obviously, pay gap remains a big issue. Obviously, mentoring has to happen. Younger people needs to get mentored by people who are champions of inclusivity, who, and I have really gotten this support recently. We were talking to Debarati in the previous session. Debarati is someone who's Debarati Guha is the director of programs at Deutsche Welle, and she is my boss, and I really call her as a leader. I mean, this is someone who has been the first person of color to really um, to really be in the managerial position after more than 60 years in Deutsche Welle, where a person of color is heading Asia programming as a department. And that gives you hope. As a younger person, I feel like there is a lot of hope for me. There's future for me here. And it really, this mentoring really, really helps. We need to also talk about mental health. I just talked about executive roles. And finally, I think I want to really talk about, because when we are talking about marginalized communities, different communities, within diversity within ourselves, we have to also understand that this is not about divisions. We're not talking about I am different from you. We are, at the end of the day, we have more in common as human beings than anything else. So we have similarities. We have we all were affected by, some were affected more than others, but by the pandemic. But there is similarity in this kind of collective suffering. So we have to understand that we're not dividing. This is not just because say for example, I'm a brown person, I can really talk about everything that's happening. It's not true. This is false diversity. We have to really become champions of inclusivity. It has to be inclusive. There has to be exchange of views. There has to be exchange of different perspectives. Without that, it is just, we can't just really tick things just because we need to have diversity today. We really, really have to believe in the principle. And finally, I think I would say that all of us have unconscious biases. All of us. A lot of us think that women, when we are doing stories on them, they're victims. They don't have their own agency. That's we need to really go ahead and far and further in understanding this. Why do we understand that? I was just talking about how migrants always being criminals. Have we done other stories? Do they have a culture in these communities that is underrepresented, is not talked about? Maybe if we do that more, we'll understand there are more similarities between all of us. We really are separated with hardly anything, and we there will be more understanding. Again, the whole idea that Dalits are voiceless, are they really voiceless, or are we not giving them the voice? Is that the question? What is we have to understand and change these semantics as well. So those were my big points that I think would benefit people and leaders in media. I would also just end on some of the success stories that are taking place in this field.
Akanksha, I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt, but we've
Sorry.
sort of crossed the time frame. So
Okay.
Sorry,
No, this is the last slide, and I just want to quickly say that these are the examples. Like BBC has a 50-50 project. I have already talked about Asia Desk. We are having more inclusive. I'll go to the questions, I think, now, if that's all right.
Yep. We actually have lots of questions.
Okay.
If you're able to see them, and you can take your pick, or I can read them out.
Could you send it to me in the chat box, or maybe
I'll just pick a couple of questions, and yep. So we can start with this one. Somebody's asking, how representative is your senior management of diversity and inclusion?
I would say it is quite diverse now. It is changing even within management. I told you that in Deutsche Welle, we have this as an editorial policy now. We have it as a corporate policy as well, to have more representation, and there are more opportunities given to people from different backgrounds, including LGBTQI, women, people with other minorities that are considered minorities here. So in each country, it changes really according to their own social cultural backgrounds. But things are really changing, and in the management, as I just answered, one, my immediate boss, who is someone who's a person of color, Debarati Guha, who's also doing the previous roundtable. Now, after 60 years that somebody came in that position, who was not, a white German person, for example, was someone from the region and knew and understood that. So it's changing.
All right. There's another one that says, what does the representation of gender look like, A, in your content and coverage, and B, in your workplace? And I club this with a third one, which says, which is asking about the gender diversity in the audience that visits VW.
Yeah, we have numbers. We have increased, engagement in terms of how many unique women users used to come and visit our pages, and that has drastically, like, there were women who were not commenting on our content earlier, for example, and we had this focus, and it changed a lot. Women are afraid to comment on stories because they fear that some people will basically start hassling them in the comments and stuff. So but when they saw that a woman is talking to them directly and is engaging in a topic of their what they want to hear on, they really have started talking. And we also encourage that in our community management, where we encourage women to talk, to tell us, to openly, we really nudge them to say, you talk about us. If there's any kind of trolling that would happen, we'll look after that, because that's part of our community guidelines as well. So there has been an increase of engagement at all levels, especially women. And your first question was in terms of content. I think that is also taking place very, we were just discussing, I gave examples of how that looks like in terms of very specific programming that's happening, because there are more women whose stories are being told.
Right. I think I'll take one last question and we'll wrap this up. What are your thoughts about the BBC 50/50 project?
My thoughts are that this was long coming, right? So it has been going for a long time, and I think it's very Ross Atkins who gives the outside source program, if you see on BBC World Service, BBC World News. He actually in real times tell you in a story particularly what was the percentage of, when this 50/50 project was launched. He would tell you what was the engagement rate of women, for example, on a particular story, because on social media, and how it performed and how many women, and it has had consistent increase. So I think it's not just what I think about it. I think it was need of the hour for a long time, and there's so many media organizations, including my organization, Deutsche Welle, that's part of the diversity 50/50 women project. And we are doing that. I mean, we've not reached the ideal, but we are close. We are close. In my team, for example, in Asia, there is an equal 50/50 division of how many women and male colleagues are there.
Right. All right, thanks, Akanksha. That presentation was great and also infuriating to see those statistics. But yeah, let's hope for the best. And with this, we've reached the end of day 2 of IMLES. And I want to thank our sponsors again, our Platinum, Silver, and Bronze sponsors, Google News Initiative, Piano Media, and Chatbeat. And of course, a big thank you to all the speakers and the audience who attended the events today. I will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. IST for the final day of the conference. Take care, stay safe, and have a lovely day.